You're listening to LibraryCast with me, Jeremy Thompson-Smith, and we are featuring the Frome Short Story Competition for Frome Festival. And today I am talking with Jill Warriner, whose story was the winning story for the local author competition, with her story Air Freshener and Jam. Jill, I was very touched by your story. It's a very original story. How did the idea for Air Freshener and Jam come to you?
Do you know, that's a very difficult question to answer, because I often find writing short stories that there's a very vague idea, a slight idea, but I really don't know where it's going, and it grows as I write it. So I am one of those people who writes a little bit by feel, and then partway through I will probably know where it's going to end up, but not always. So it will be a character, somebody I've seen, a street, some little thing that's happened, something often quite tiny that I just grab hold of and then sort of hang things onto and gradually develop into a story. So in this case, it was the street more than the figure, and then the idea of a woman in the environs of Bath, actually, and just wondering where her life had been. So yeah, so something that sort of grew on me as I started to write it, I suppose.
How did you, and how do you imagine Elsa's character in the short story? She's
a person of another time, really, because she lived through the Second World War. She was obviously active in the Second World War, and that's just mentioned early on in the story, almost in passing, and you don't know quite. So there's things left unsaid there. It's rather enigmatic as to what she did, but she did something that she was proud of and that she remembers pretty vividly, as quite a lot of older people do. They remember things in their past quite vividly. So she's proud of that and holding on to that, but her life has degenerated into something, as you say. She's a woman of habits, and she no longer has that sense of fulfillment, importance, being needed by people apart from by Harold, her husband. She is in a little bit of a time warp as well, because there are a couple of things in the story tell you that she's rather prejudiced in some ways. She's prejudiced against the people in the street, the homeless person. She's prejudiced against the girl in the shop with the hoop gold earrings. She's got quite a close world around her, and yet she's lived in France. She was French. She is French, and she's done something important. She's had a life that is far larger than the streets in which she now lives. And so there's a sort of, I think I see her as a character with some self-importance which she shoulders and which she is very proud of, and which she's reluctant to let go of, and a feeling of other people don't know this about me. And they didn't actually know it then, because there were secrets that I held, and that is alluded to. And I have a lot more than people realise. But in with all of that is a tremendous fear. She's frightened of the people in the street. She's frightened of being made fun of. She's frightened of the fact that she's obviously got some sort of dementia, early stage dementia. She's frightened of the fact that she will be made a fool of in the shop because she can't find her change in front of other customers and that sort of thing. So she's a mixture of some very contrasting things. Somebody who was fully equipped to do some quite dangerous things and that had a sort of a frisson of danger about them, and yet this woman of habits who is frightened to walk down the street, and whose next door cat even is a something that she can't handle.
I noticed that your book is dealing with many different subjects, but at the same time, there's all these little delicacies that's thrown into the story, which alludes to what you just said, walking over this obvious homeless man outside of the supermarket who you describe as a figure. There's almost more a description of the dog from her observation, and the woman working in the supermarket of describing, as you mentioned, her earrings rather than the actual person herself. And yet, in many ways, Elsa represents us, all of us. There's something of all of us in Elsa. And it's something that actually, as people grow older and try to do the simple things in life, it's more frightening, isn't it? It's more trying to remember what you need to do first and getting slightly anxious of not being able to do it. Do you see anything in Elsa in yourself or in the populace as a whole?
Yes, I think that is true. And not wanting to admit to that fact that you can't quite do those things that you used to be able to, and then being surprised by some things that you can do. My own mother died 2 years ago now, and she was 97. She was very alert still, very, very active, and was somebody very much to be admired. But I did see in her little things that she couldn't do in the same way that she used to be able to do. So I saw that in her. You see it obviously in other people. You see it in yourself. I'm 66, so things like that happen. Yes, there's a sense of sort of self-preservation there, I think, that we would all like to have, rather than saying, oh God, I can't do this anymore, sit down on the sofa and give it all up. I'm very much somebody who thinks, people should get on and do. You shouldn't let it all sort of wash over you and say, I can't do this any longer.
I asked Jill how she created her story and whether she developed her characters first or the actual themes of her story.
I think it did very much develop out of the characters. I often don't quite know where a story is going when I begin it, even as I get into it actually. And themes of dementia and loneliness, which are very present with us in today's world, are things that bother me. So they're themes that I include tend to be, as I'm sure they are for most people who write stories, they're things that you are concerned about. So you tend to gravitate towards those things, and in order to give them some exposure, so to ask people to think about them. I think most writers have themes which recur again and again. In the stories that I've written, there will more often than not be some loneliness, some neediness, some wanting other people to see you as you would like to be seen, and fear of not being seen as you would like to be seen and not quite coming up to the mark, and that sort of thing. So those themes are probably sort of going, they rear their heads as I start to write anyway. I like to include, sometimes a little bit of humour. So about Elsa, although she's a pitiful character in many ways, when you know about her past, then you sort of all of a sudden, hopefully, you're sort of brought up slightly, because you think, oh gosh, actually she did have a past, and she was a very interesting person, and has things that she can tell. But in the shop, she, as well as being pitiful, there is a certain amount of humour there with her not being able to find the right thing, and going up and down the aisles and picking up the wrong thing, or panicking because she can't find the right thing. And so I like to try to vary the tone, I suppose, of the story as I'm going through.
So, first prize for local author in Frome's 2020 short story competition. How did you feel when you got the news?
Absolutely gobsmacked. I was, I haven't won anything before. I've been shortlisted for a few things, not many. I've been to quite a few competitions, but with massive gaps in between. So it's not something I do all the time. So it was just, it came very unexpectedly. And I was just so delighted. I'm sure that most people would say the same thing when they win a competition like this, unless they're very used to it. I felt, oh gosh, at last somebody has seen that I can write something that's worthwhile somebody else reading, and somebody else has got it. So it was so wonderful to have somebody say, oh, actually, I like this story. It's worth something. So yeah, I was bowled over.
Well, many congratulations. You
Yes.
just mentioned that you're surprised that other people might want to read your story. We'd like you to surprise us by reading us an excerpt from Air Freshener and Jam.
Thank you. This is a short paragraph, fairly near the beginning. All of a sudden, there's a dog. It wasn't there, and then it was, barking at her. And a figure in the doorway, coming at her out of the shadows. One of those street people. She knows their sort too. She's seen them exchanging glances, handing over notes, messages on slips of paper, talking behind their hands, smiling, pretending they don't know what's going on, spying on her. Well, she has their measure. Elsa, La Petite, they called her, the English soldiers, coming and going with messages tucked into her undergarments, never knowing who might be following or who you could trust, who might answer the door, who might go missing in the middle of the night. And now these dirty youths in doorways with their dogs. She could tell them a thing or two if she wanted. She knew things.
What are you writing at the moment? Have you got a sort of a plot that you are planning, and when will that be completed?
In the aftermath of having won this, I thought, okay, idea, write something else, Jill. So I wrote a very short thing just this week, actually, and it takes a real incident, something that happened to me and somebody in my family. It's in the present tense, as this one is. That's something I've just started to try to experiment with, really, and I quite like that. And it's told from the point of view of the two people involved. So first of all, you hear the younger person, and then you hear the voice of the older person. So yeah, it's very short, but I was pleased when I finished it, and now just got an idea for. I am quite interested in the future before it happens. I mean, the immediate future, like minutes ahead. So you know what you're going to say, what to do, and you rehearse that in your head. So before you actually say it or do it, you see yourself doing it. So I think I'm going to write something around that sort of living the future before it happens, and yeah, seeing where that goes.
Sounds that you have lots of wide and diverse subjects to write about, and it seems to be a very creative phase for you, Jill. So you may then consider entering the Frome Short Story Competition for 2021, or are you going to retire as winner?
Oh God, no. Yes, I would definitely enter again, and I would, yeah, hope to be considered. It's a fantastic platform for people, and particularly to have something that is open for local authors. So you enter it as a national competition, but to know that local authors are being considered on a separate basis, I think is a wonderful thing, and to encourage that locally, it just, sort of gives people a bit of a step up, and they think, the possibility of you achieving something locally, which has meaning for other people locally and so on, and can encourage hopefully other writers, and maybe something could be done in schools and so on, and that sort of thing. No, I would definitely, I think it's a lovely thing to do, to have a local competition and within the national one.
Jill Warriner, Air Freshener and Jam, thank you for joining us on LibraryCast.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
To find out more about the Frome Short Story Competition, why not visit their website, which is fromeshortstorycompetition.co.uk. You can read Jill Warriner's story, Air Freshener Jam, on their webpage, as well as the runner-up for the local competition, Missing the Boat, from Vivian Oldacre. You can also read the first 3 places of the national and worldwide international competition, where you can read Peace Offering, The Prodigal Robin, and Missing the Boat. As well as that, you can also catch up and find out who else entered the competition. You'll be able to see the names of the stories of the short and long list for the 2020 Frome Short Story Competition. You've been listening to LibraryCast, brought to you by Somerset Libraries, bringing to you Libraries from Home.